a single image. 3 smiling faces, 1 hidden threat nobody saw. When Lila Morgan sent her mother a selfie from her camping trip with her grandparents, she had no idea it would be the last proof they were alive. No idea that something lurked at the edge of the frame. No idea that 14 days later, that same innocent photo would reveal a chilling truth hiding in plain sight. What happens when the last memory of someone you love becomes evidence in their disappearance? When a simple photograph holds the key to a mystery nobody could solve. Welcome to Last Seen Stories, where we uncover the truth behind mysterious disappearances and unsolved cases that haunt communities long after the headlines fade. I'm grateful you joined us today. If you're new here, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and also hit the subscribe button so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world around you. Today's case strikes at our deepest fears. That danger can be present even in our happiest moments, watching silently from the shadows. The Morgan Foster disappearance shocked a quiet rural community, left a mother desperate for answers, and turned a cherished family memory into the centerpiece of a baffling investigation. This is the story of 3 people who vanished without a trace, and the single pixel that changed everything. Vanessa Morgan never took a single day with her daughter for granted. A single mother since Lila was 5, she'd built her world around raising a confident, independent young woman. Their apartment in Riverdale wasn't large, but it was always filled with laughter, music, and endless conversations about Lila's dreams. At 17, Lila Morgan was everything a mother could hope for: straight-A student, track team captain, already receiving early college interest letters. Her wavy brown hair and bright hazel eyes mirrored her mother's, but her quiet confidence and unwavering determination were entirely her own. She was the kind of kid who made you proud without even trying, Vanessa would later tell reporters, her voice breaking. The kind who remembered everyone's birthday, who stood up for kids getting bullied, who helped the elderly neighbors with their groceries without being asked. But while Vanessa and Lila were close, there was a special bond that connected Lila to her grandparents, Nora and Gerald Foster. The Fosters lived in Pine Hollow, a town of barely 2,000 people that sat at the edge of Blackwood National Forest. Gerald had worked as a park ranger for 30 years before retiring, and Nora had been the town's librarian. They were fixtures in the community, known for their kindness, their knowledge of the forest, and their famous apple pie that won the county fair 12 years running. They were also experienced outdoors people. Gerald could identify every bird call, every animal track, every edible plant in Blackwood. Nora could start a fire in a rainstorm and navigate by stars when trails disappeared. Together, they'd hiked every inch of the forest, climbed most of the mountains in 3 neighboring states, and camped in conditions that would send most people running for the nearest hotel. This love for nature was something they passed down through generations. They had a tradition. Each grandchild would go on a special 3-day camping trip with them before senior year of high school. It was a rite of passage, a chance to connect with nature and with family history before taking the first steps into adulthood. For Lila, who adored her grandparents and spent every summer in Pine Hollow since she could walk, this trip wasn't just tradition, it was something she'd been looking forward to for years. August 12th, 2022. The summer heat was beginning to soften, giving way to the first whispers of fall. Lila packed her backpack with the careful precision of someone who'd been taught well. Layers for changing temperatures, rain gear, even though the forecast was clear, first aid supplies she hopefully wouldn't need. Vanessa watched from the doorway, a familiar tangle of emotions knotting in her chest. Pride in her daughter's capability, joy at her excitement, and that ever-present thread of worry that never quite leaves a parent's heart. "You've got your portable charger?" Vanessa asked, knowing the answer but needing to ask anyway. "Yes, Mom." Lila didn't roll her eyes. She understood her mother's concern came from love. "And you'll text when you get there. And each night. Promise. Grandpa says there's one spot near their campsite where you can get a bar or two of service if you hold your phone just right." Lake Marrow wasn't on most maps. It was a small, crystal-clear lake deep in Blackwood Forest, about 3 hours hiking distance from the nearest access road. The locals knew it, but tourists rarely ventured that far in. The Fosters had been camping there for decades. It was their special place, beautiful, serene, and gloriously disconnected from the modern world. The Fosters' old camper van was parked outside Vanessa's apartment by 6 a.m. It was packed to the brim with supplies, 2 tents, cooking equipment, fishing gear, and enough food to last twice as long as they planned to stay. "Always pack for the trip you might have, not just the trip you plan," Gerald Foster liked to say. Nora hugged Vanessa tight. "We'll take good care of her," she whispered. "Always do." As the van pulled away, Lila waved from the passenger window, face bright with anticipation. Vanessa waved back, ignoring the small voice in her head that whispered, "What if this is the last time you see her?" Parents always have these thoughts. They almost never come true. Almost never. The drive to Pine Hollow took just under 2 hours. Lila texted when they arrived at her grandparents' house. "Made it to Pine Hollow," grabbing a few more things, then heading to the trailhead. Gerald loaded the last of their gear into 3 hiking backpacks, while Nora made sandwiches for the trail. The plan was to reach Lake Marrow by mid-afternoon, set up camp before sunset, and spend the evening fishing for their dinner. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, mild temperature, just enough breeze to keep the mosquitoes away. The hike to Lake Marrow was challenging enough to feel like an adventure, but familiar enough that the Fosters could navigate it effortlessly. Gerald pointed out bare scratches on trees, bird nests hidden in branches, and mushrooms that looked identical to edible ones but could cause hallucinations if consumed. Lila soaked it all in, asking questions, taking pictures of particularly beautiful spots. She'd been to Lake Marrow before, but never for an overnight trip. This was different. This mattered. They reached the lake just after 3 p.m. The water was still, reflecting the towering pine trees and blue sky like a perfect mirror. They set up camp on a small clearing about 20 feet from the shoreline, close enough to hear the gentle lapping of water, but far enough to avoid the midnight mosquito swarms that gathered at the water's edge. Nora and Lila set up the tents, while Gerald prepared fishing lines. By sunset, they'd caught 3 decent-sized trout, cleaned them by the lake, and were cooking them over a crackling campfire. Gerald told stories about his years as a ranger, encounters with bears, rescuing lost hikers, the time he found an entire family who'd been missing for 3 days, holed up in a cave during a thunderstorm. After dinner, as the fire burned low and stars emerged in dazzling clarity above the lake, Gerald told ghost stories, the kind that made you jump at every snapping twig but laugh afterward. It was perfect, exactly what the trip was supposed to be. At 9:38 p.m, Lila remembered her promise. "Wait," she said, standing up. "I need to check in with Mom." She wandered around the perimeter of their campsite, phone held high, searching for that elusive signal. When her screen finally showed a single bar, she positioned herself carefully between her grandparents and asked Gerald to hold the phone. "Smile!" she said, and they did. 3 generations grinning in the firelight, the lake shimmer behind them. She sent the photo with a quick message. "Made it!" "Grandpa's already telling ghost stories. Love you!" Vanessa responded immediately with hearts. Relief washed over her when she saw their faces, happy and safe. She studied the image before falling asleep that night, Lila's wide smile, Nora's arm around her shoulders, Gerald's faded baseball cap casting shadows across his weathered face. Everything looked perfect. She had no way of knowing it would be the last communication she would ever receive from any of them. Day 2. Vanessa went about her Saturday routine. Grocery shopping, laundry, catching up on work emails. She checked her phone often, but no texts came through. By evening, a small knot of worry had formed, but she pushed it away. Reception was spotty after all. They were probably having too much fun to bother finding the signal spot again. Day 3. Sunday passed in similar fashion. The worry grew harder to ignore, but Vanessa had reasons ready. They're enjoying being unplugged. They might have hiked to another area. Lila's phone could have died. They were due back tomorrow anyway. Still, she called Lila's phone before bed. Straight to voicemail. Day 4. Monday morning, Vanessa called in sick to work. When 10 a.m. passed with no word and no answer from any of their phones, she got in her car and drove to Pine Hollow. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The Fosters' neat 2-story home sat dark and quiet. Their mailbox was full, 4 days' worth of letters and flyers. Vanessa knocked anyway, peered through windows, checked the garage. The camper van wasn't there. Mrs. Calloway, the neighbor across the street, came out to water her plants. They headed out early Friday, she confirmed. Nora was so excited about taking Lila to the lake. They should have been back yesterday. That was all Vanessa needed to hear. She drove straight to the Pine Hollow Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Donovan knew the Fosters well. Everyone in town did. His face grew serious as Vanessa explained the situation. "Gerald knows that forest better than anyone," he said, but he was already reaching for his radio. "But you're right to be concerned. 3 days, no contact. That's not like them." By afternoon, search and rescue teams were assembling. Local volunteers, police officers, forest rangers. Within hours, nearly 40 people were ready to begin searching the Lake Marrow area at first light the next day. Vanessa couldn't sleep. She paced her motel room all night, calling Lila's phone every hour, staring at that last selfie until every detail was burned into her memory. If you're watching this right now, I want you to pause and think. What would you do if someone you loved went camping and stopped responding? Would you wait it out, assuming they're just enjoying nature? Or would you immediately assume the worst? Let me know in the comments below. Your answer might help someone facing this situation in the future. Days 5 to 7. The search expanded with each passing day. Helicopters swept over the dense forest canopy. Trained dogs followed scents from clothing taken from the Fosters' home. Teams of volunteers combed every trail, every clearing, every rocky outcropping within miles of Lake Marrow. The first breakthrough came on day 7. They found the campsite. It was eerie, recalled Ranger Martinez, who led the team that made the discovery. Everything was still there, the tents still standing, cooking equipment laid out, 3 fishing poles propped against a tree, but no sign of people. The campfire had long since gone cold, but it showed signs of having burned down naturally, not being extinguished. 3 backpacks sat inside one of the tents, containing clothes, toiletries, first aid supplies. Lila's phone charger was still plugged into her portable battery pack. Her notebook lay open on her sleeping bag, the last entry a description of catching her first lake trout. Nothing suggested a struggle, nothing suggested a hasty departure. It was as if they had simply vanished in the middle of a perfectly normal camping trip. "People don't just disappear," Sheriff Donovan told the growing crowd of reporters. "We're considering all possibilities. They could have gone hiking and gotten lost. There could have been a medical emergency or—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Days 8 to 10. The investigation expanded beyond Lake Marrow. Authorities interviewed every resident of Pine Hollow, every regular hiker and camper known to frequent the area. They checked hospitals in a 100-mile radius, put out alerts to neighboring counties, and dredged parts of the lake, finding nothing. The media descended on Pine Hollow. Local stations at first, then national news. Family of 3 vanishes in Blackwood Forest ran across Chirons. Experts speculated on camera. Theories multiplied. Vanessa barely registered any of it. She joined every search party, stayed up reviewing maps, called anyone who might have information. Her boss had given her unlimited leave. Nothing mattered except finding her daughter and her parents. "I keep thinking about the little things," she told a reporter who found her sitting alone at the search command center, staring at her phone. "Like how Lila always sleeps with this stuffed otter she's had since she was 3. It was in her tent. She would never willingly go anywhere overnight without it." The reporter didn't include that detail in the story. It was too heart-wrenching, too personal. Some pain doesn't belong to the public, even in the most public of tragedies. Days 11 to 13. The search continued, but hope dimmed with each passing day. Vanessa refused to leave Pine Hollow. She rented a small cabin on the edge of town, turning the kitchen table into a command center of maps, notes, and timelines. Late on the night of day 13, exhausted and desperate, she found herself once again staring at the selfie, the last proof that Lila, Nora, and Gerald had been alive and happy. She'd looked at it hundreds of times by now, searching for any clue, any hint of what was to come. Their smiles revealed nothing. The campsite looked ordinary. The lake behind them was calm. It was just a happy family moment, frozen in time. Vanessa's eyes burned from lack of sleep. She zoomed in on Lila's face, touching the screen gently, as if she could somehow reach through the pixels and pull her daughter back to safety. Then she zoomed out, looking at the entire image one more time. That's when she saw it. In the background, just beyond the glow of the campfire, partially obscured by shadows and trees, something didn't fit. Vanessa's heart pounded as she zoomed in on that section of the photo, enhancing it as much as her phone would allow. A figure, standing at the tree line, watching them. At first, she thought her exhausted mind was playing tricks. She rubbed her eyes, looked again. No, it was definitely there. A tall silhouette, dressed in dark clothing, standing absolutely still among the trees. The figure was positioned in such a way that it would have been directly behind them, watching them take the selfie. The figure appeared to be holding something long and narrow. A walking stick, perhaps. Or something worse. Vanessa's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. A random hiker, a hunter, someone who had been stalking them. Why hadn't they noticed someone standing there? Why hadn't Gerald, with his decades of forest experience, sensed a presence watching them? Day 14. At 6:37 a.m., Vanessa burst into the sheriff's office, still wearing the clothes she'd slept in, eyes wild with fear and revelation. "There was someone there," she said, thrusting her phone at Sheriff Donovan. "Look! Look!" The sheriff squinted at the screen. Then his expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He called in his deputies, the FBI agents who had joined the investigation, the search coordinator. "Send this to our technical team," he ordered. "I want this enhanced, analyzed, everything we can get from it." Within hours, the investigation had new urgency. The selfie, that had been just a heartbreaking reminder of what was lost, became the centerpiece of a possible crime scene. "It changes everything," Agent Rivera of the FBI told the sheriff, while Vanessa sat nearby, hands clasped so tightly her nails cut into her palms. This wasn't a hiking accident. This wasn't a medical emergency. Someone was there with them. Someone they didn't know was watching. Vanessa couldn't stop the thoughts flooding her mind. Had that figure been watching them all day? Had it followed them from the trailhead? Was it someone who knew the Fosters would be there? And the question that haunted her most: if she had spotted this 14 days ago, could she have saved them? The discovery of the figure in the photo transformed the search. What had been a missing persons case became a potential criminal investigation. The FBI took the lead, bringing in forensic experts, behavioral analysts, and additional resources. The enhanced photo revealed more details about the mysterious figure. It appeared to be tall, likely male, based on height and build. The object in his hand was long and curved, possibly a hunting knife or machete. Most disturbing was the posture, not the stance of someone passing by, but of someone deliberately observing, body angled toward the family. Whoever this is, Agent Rivera explained, they were watching intentionally, and based on where they're positioned, they would have been able to see the campsite clearly while remaining nearly invisible in the tree line. Authorities revisited previously dismissed evidence. A week before the Fosters' trip, Ranger Martinez had found a campsite ransacked about 2 miles from Lake Marrow, supplies scattered, a tent slashed open, but no campers to be found. The incident had been logged as probable bear activity. Bears don't unzip tents before tearing them, Martinez said quietly. Bears don't take only food and leave valuable equipment behind. I should have pushed harder for an investigation. Another family, the Hendersons, came forward after seeing news of the photo. They'd been camping 3 miles from Lake Marrow just 2 weeks before the Fosters disappeared. We heard footsteps circling our tent for hours, Jack Henderson recounted. When I finally got up the courage to look outside, there was nobody there. But in the morning we found boot prints all around our site. We packed up and left immediately. Historical records revealed more disturbing patterns. Over the past 15 years, 9 hikers had gone missing in Blackwood Forest. 5 were eventually found, 3 alive, 2 deceased from apparent accidents. 4 were never found at all. The cases had been treated as isolated incidents attributed to the dangers of the wilderness. Now, investigators weren't so sure. We're looking at the possibility that someone has been living off the grid in Blackwood, Sheriff Donovan told the press. Someone who knows the forest well enough to move through it undetected, who may have been responsible for other disappearances we previously thought were unrelated. Search teams returned to Lake Marrow, this time looking not just for the missing family, but for evidence of a predator. Camps, shelters, anything suggesting human habitation deep in the forest where it shouldn't be. I want to hear your theories. Who do you think was watching the Morgan family that night? A random drifter? A calculated predator? Someone who knew them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight might shed light on this baffling case. As the investigation expanded, so did public interest in Blackwood Forest itself. Locals began sharing stories they'd dismissed for years as superstition or campfire tales. Blackwood had always had an unsettling reputation. The dense, 50,000-acre forest with its ancient trees and unexpected ravines could disorient even experienced hikers. Fog rolled in without warning. Sounds carried strangely, sometimes seeming to come from all directions at once. My grandfather used to say Blackwood has its own rules, said Eleanor Whitman, Pine Hollow's oldest resident at 93. He said some parts of that forest have never seen sunlight and things live in those shadows that don't have names. Stories of the Blackwood drifter had circulated for generations, a solitary figure supposedly living deep in the forest, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Most dismissed it as legend, a boogeyman invented to keep children from wandering too far into the woods. But as investigators dug deeper, they found incident reports dating back decades, unexplained footprints around campsites, belongings going missing, campers reporting being watched by unseen eyes. In 1978, a family of 4 had vanished in the northern section of Blackwood. The case went cold until 1982, when a hunter found a cave containing items belonging to the missing family. No bodies were ever recovered. The Forest Service conducted thorough searches after each incident, explained former ranger Thomas Beck. But Blackwood has hundreds of caves, ravines, abandoned mining tunnels. A person who knows the terrain could disappear for years and never be found. Psychological experts weighed in on the potential profile of someone living in such isolation. Extended isolation from society can profoundly alter one's perception of human relationships, noted Dr. Karen Mitchell, a forensic psychologist consulting on the case. Someone who has lived alone in the wilderness for years might no longer view other humans as people, but as either threats or resources. The forest that had once seemed merely wild now felt malevolent, as if the trees themselves were hiding secrets in their shadows. The discovery of the figure in the selfie sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. The image was published in newspapers, aired on television, and shared millions of times online, always with the shadowy figure circled in red, a visual reminder of the threat that had gone unnoticed. Internet sleuths descended on the case, analyzing every pixel of the photo, creating enhancement algorithms to try to identify the figure's face, developing elaborate theories about the disappearance. Some claims were outlandish: supernatural entities, government conspiracies, alien abductions. Others were disturbingly plausible. A true crime podcast dedicated 3 episodes to the case. Amateur detectives traveled to Pine Hollow, much to the frustration of local authorities. The forest itself became both feared and perversely attractive to thrill seekers, forcing officials to close large sections to the public. Through it all, Vanessa Morgan remained in Pine Hollow, waiting for answers that never seemed to come. She moved into her parents' house, keeping it exactly as they'd left it, coffee cup still in the sink, Gerald's crossword puzzle half finished on the side table, Nora's gardening gloves draped over the porch railing. "The hardest part is not knowing," she told a journalist who visited 6 months after the disappearance. "Not knowing if they're suffering, if they're alive, if they're together. Not knowing if I should grieve or hope." The selfie became both comfort and torment. She couldn't stop looking at it. The last moment of happiness before everything shattered. But now she couldn't see their smiles without seeing that figure lurking behind them, a shadow that had always been there but that she'd discovered too late. "I kept thinking, if only I'd seen it that night," she said. "If only I'd looked more carefully at the background instead of just their faces. Would it have made a difference? Could I have warned them?" It was a question without an answer, a hypothetical that couldn't change what had already happened, but that continued to haunt her days and nights. The case changed how people viewed photographs, how they experienced the outdoors. Parents examined the backgrounds of their children's photos with new paranoia. Campers reported feeling watched, even in broad daylight. A simple selfie had revealed how vulnerable we all are, how danger can be present even in our happiest moments, hiding just beyond the edge of the frame. 3 years have passed since Lila Morgan, Nora Foster, and Gerald Foster disappeared from Lake Marrow. The case remains officially open, but active searches ended long ago. The figure in the photo was never identified. In the spring following their disappearance, a hiker found Gerald's baseball cap wedged between rocks near a stream 2 miles from their campsite. DNA testing confirmed it was his, but the discovery led to no further evidence. Blackwood Forest keeps its secrets. The trees stand silent, sentinel over whatever happened that night. The lake continues to reflect the sky as if nothing ever happened on its shores. Vanessa Morgan still lives in Pine Hollow, in her parents' house, surrounded by their belongings and memories. She leads a support group for families of missing persons. Every August 12th, she hikes to Lake Marrow and leaves 3 flowers floating on the water. "I don't know if I'll ever have answers," she told us in an exclusive interview, "but I need people to remember them. To remember that they existed, that they mattered, that they're more than just a mysterious disappearance in a news headline." The selfie that changed everything remains on Vanessa's phone. She can't delete it. It's the last image of her family together. It's evidence. It's a warning. This case teaches us painful lessons about awareness, about the hidden dangers that might lurk at the edges of our vision, about how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. It reminds us that in our world of carefully curated social media images, the truth might be hiding in the background, just waiting for someone to notice. If you found this story impactful, please hit the like button and share it with others. Subscribe to Last Seen Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss a case that might change how you see the world around you. Your support helps us continue to shine light on stories that deserve to be told. Next week, we'll examine the baffling case of twins who vanished from their college campus, only to have one return 5 years later with no memory of what happened to her sister. Until then, look carefully at the world around you. Sometimes the most important details are hiding in plain sight.